Welcome to this webinar titled TMT's New Paradigm in Community Engagement in Hawaii. My name is Dave Anderson, and I'm the instrument group leader and acting project scientist at TMT. Before I pass it over to our speakers, I want to remind everyone that there will be another TMT webinar in 2 weeks on May 30th at the same time, discussing the technical progress and scientific capabilities of TMT. Also, be aware that we're recording this webinar so we can share it with our colleagues who are in different time zones and those who can't join us today due to conflicts. So I know many people in the astronomical community at large last heard about TMT in Hawaii in 2019 after the protests that blocked the Maunakea access road and resulted in arrests. Today, we'll hear about the tireless work of Fengchuan, Yuko, Kakazu, and other TMTers who have engaged to improve the relations with the Hawaiian community. Fengchuan has been the TMT project manager since 2021, and Yuko is our education, outreach, and broader impacts manager and scientist. And she's been working with TMT since 2022. So everyone has the ability to ask questions in the chat, and but we'll be answering those questions at the end. And if you ask a question, we can unmute you, so you can have a little dialogue as well. So so feel free to ask those questions. And with that housekeeping done, Fengchuan and Yuko, take it away.
Okay, I'll start first, and I think this is truly has been a teamwork. Everyone here in Hawaii on our team will contribute to this, and Kyuki Kai works actually also full-time on this. I say Yuko actually joined us in 2021, right after I came here. At the time, she was a member of an AOJ working on TMT, but in 2022, she officially joined us on TIO. Okay. Next slide, please. So this is the outline. We talk about the TMT protests, understanding the background, and talk about Astro 2020 and TMT's journey since 2019 and lessons learned from Maunakea. And it's going to be a tag team. I'll do part of it, and Yuko does the others. Understanding the background. So the protests in 2019 really divided the community. Well, 60 to 70% the people in Hawaii across the state in general support TMT, and there were thousands and thousands of people protesting against TMT, and predominantly Native Hawaiians. When the Native Hawaiian policemen were asked to arrest their fellow Native Hawaiians, including their revered kupuna, that's when things really got out of control. And the TMT issue clearly divided the community. And on behalf of our organization, TIO, we apologize. Next slide. And so this goes back to 1960s and 70s when Hawaii experienced a cultural renaissance, from Hokulea's voyage to Tahiti to Merrimack Festival, to Hawaii immersion schools, revitalized culture, language, and identity. It really empowered the new generation of Native Hawaiians with pride. And one of the earliest protests was in 1976 against Navy bombing of Kaho'olawe Island. Next. And so Native Hawaiians became much more aware of the historical injustice they suffered and the current economic struggles. When often here we can no longer afford living on our own lands. The history of Hawaii is often tied to the history of land. You look at Maunakea, the map on the lower left corner. Maunakea is almost entirely what they call the ceded land, or the public lands, and it used to be in the Kingdom of Hawaiian days, used to be half of this were government land, half of this were crown lands. And yet today, Native Hawaiians feel they have limited influence over its management. For many Hawaiians, TMT represents the history of colonialism and unresolved injustices. Next. It is in this context that you've seen this slide actually from NSF talk, not from us. And in September 2024, NSF presented and said it's not just TMT protests, but Native Hawaiians communities are fighting on multiple fronts, preserving opportunities to restore thriving ecosystems through the contemporary application of science technology embedded in ancestral knowledge and cultural practice. And that includes Lahaina recovery and the water rights and deep ocean mining, the Pohakuloa training areas, and the Red Hill, obviously. Next slide. So I will switch this to Yuko, who will talk about Astro 2020.
Sure. Thank you, Fengchuan. So in November 2021, as many of you are aware, the Astro 2020 Decadal Survey was published. And this was actually featured in front page newspaper article on Big Island, Hawaii Tribune Herald, saying that NSF should fund TMT, so USCLT. So together, TMT and Giant Magellan Telescope, GMT, we are US ELT program, and we were ranked #1 in ground-based telescope. But at the same time, the Astro 2020 also points out Maunakea Observatory's insufficient engagement with the local community, in particular indigenous communities, despite 50+ years of Maunakea astronomy. So the Astro 2020 says that despite the long history of Maunakea astronomy, there are only 3 Native Hawaiians with PhD in astronomy and astrophysics. So this number has increased to 4, and it's going to be 5 soon. But still, despite 50+ years of astronomy in Hawaii, there are only a few Native Hawaiian PhDs in astronomy and astrophysics. And in fact, if you compare the number of students in astronomy with those in other physical science areas, astronomy has the least number of students, the indigenous students in the field. So Astro 2020 says that we have not, astronomical community has not fully engaged with local communities, in particular indigenous communities, for whom land and mountain are sacred. So Astro 2020 recommends this. 3 key recommendations. First one, listen and empower. And 2, aim to do good for all. And 3, invest in the future together. Now, this Astro 2020 was published in November 2021, but Fengchuan was already in Hawaii. He moved to Hilo in June the same year, but 6 months earlier, and he was already engaging with the local community, in particular Native Hawaiian communities who have been traditionally opposing the project. So Astro 2020 called for community-based astronomy, emphasizing the need for true, genuine engagement with the entire community, especially indigenous people, because a lot of ground-based telescopes are in remote mountains, high mountains, which oftentimes are considered sacred for local indigenous people there. So this is in fact not just Maunakea TMT, it's global issue. Previously, TMT has funded $1 million a year for educational workforce development programs. However, we quickly realized after 2019 massive protests that we were only engaging with the upper middle class people. So we are only touching the surface of the iceberg, like state agencies, business and middle class communities whose children already have access to quality STEM education and opportunities, those students who will go to 4-year university without our help. And we realized that In the past, our programs were not really reaching out to the underserved students, in particular indigenous students in rural areas. Those students have almost no access to STEM education and opportunities. And we quickly learned that even though Mauna Kea is sacred land and it's a Native Hawaiian ceded land, however, the benefits didn't go to these Native Hawaiian students who needed these resources the most. So our focus has been those so-called the missing millions, those students, underserved students who do not have access to quality education. So perhaps Fengchuan, could you take over from here, TMT's journey?
Okay. I want to start by saying this is not a PR stunt or a PR change. It's a fundamental change of who we are, what we do, and how we respect and honor indigenous people, land, culture, and history. And this goes beyond just one project and today. It's going to change everything we do in the future. We're now focused on building long-term trust and relationship with indigenous communities, co-creating a future together. And regardless of what happens to the project. Next slide. And there are 4 phases of this. Phase 1 is a dialogue. A lot of times these 4 phases go on concurrently, engaging with the KI leaders and people who protested us. We'll go into more details in here, and co-creation. Through these conversations, we learn from the community and co-create programs and co-execute programs, community-led and reviewed. And now we're getting into the communication phase. We are talking about the experience we have and the lessons we learned. Next slide. And so phase 1 dialogue, and so this is based on respectful dialogue, listen and learn from the community. Since 2021, we have a new team here, and Yuko and Kyoki, picture left, work full-time, but everyone else in our small local team in Hilo, we all contribute to Angelique, Diana. And on the right, there's a KI leader who taught me how to do honey. This is quite an honor, traditional Hawaiian greeting. It's the highest honor. Thank you. Next slide. So in summary, we have engaged over, I keep notes of these, over 1,500 community leaders. At least half of them were people who protested us, the Kiayu protectors of Maunakea, including kupunas. There were 38 kupunas rests in 2019. We have talked to half of them, 19 of them, in private conversations. We've talked to all the Hawaiian homestead leaders around the island and in some other island as well. And we've been to many Hawaiian public charter schools, immersion schools, and community leaders in rural areas. And some of the pictures here, upper left, is a kupuna who arrested in 2019 invited us to Maunakea and sit around the table, switching chairs actually, and talk about everything from Maunakea culture, history to astronomy and TMT. In the middle is our board member from Canada, Japan, my boss, executive director here joining us in conversation with Royal Order folks. On the right, it was talking to Kupuna, who leads the Merrimack parade. On the left, and there was a picture of 2 or 3, actually 3 Kupuna who were arrested in 2015 and 2019. And in the lower pictures, and where board member from Caltech joined us in rural areas, Maku, and we were in Honokaa at the film festival with a Kupuna there. Next slide. So I want to say there's a myth that talking about TMT hurts the feeling of Native Hawaiian people. That's not right. In fact, talking about TMT with the right approach and most respectful approach is the only way to heal the division, co-create a bright future for all. And we're inspired, in fact, by Canadians' process of reconciliation with First Nations. And this has been supported by our conversation with over 800 KIEs without exception. Every conversation often starts with very rough and difficult, but it always ends better without exception. Next slide. Another myth is Native Hawaiians only protest TMT. If TMT goes away, everything will be fine. That is not correct. TMT in 2019 became a symbol to the Native Hawaiians of the long history of mistreatment. What Native Hawaiian people really want are A, respect, and B, part of the decision making, particularly when it comes to decisions impacting the Aina, the land, the Manda. And three, the tangible benefit to the Native Hawaiian community. As specific to Maunakea, what we hear, not just a few of them, almost from all of them, is that they wish to see more decommissioning as promised. And this is a trust credibility issue. And also they want to see more rents paid to benefit not just astronomy, but also to the Native Hawaiian community. This is a fairness issue. You hear in public speeches, these issues come up, but in private conversations, as I mentioned, almost all conversations mention these two issues. Next. So what we have learned is summarized is Native Hawaiians really want respect, part of the decision making on their land, tangible benefits to the community, especially for future of their children. Next slide. So these are the criticism we often hear, and this guides us in what we do. How come you astronomy people don't talk to us? Let me tell you why. You telescope people intentionally ignore us. You look down on us. I must say, you know, the last few years, as I have witnessed, the observatory MKOs and UH folks have done a lot better job, going out to talk to people. And yet, when we go to rural areas, homestead communities, you still hear today this criticism. We're not against science. Issue is never culture versus science. We're only against the way you do science, where you did science. Do not label us anti-science. It's disrespectful. I don't see any tangible benefits for us, for Maunakea astronomy. There's no job other than construction job for us local people on the Mauna, no workforce development, no hope for our children. Our children struggling at school, as we witnessed firsthand. I also must say, over the last few years, all the observatories UH are doing better in this regard. There's a lot more to do, obviously, and astronomy is damaging the environment of Maunakea. So I will turn this to Yuko and talk about what do we do about this criticism.
Sure, thank you, Fengchuan. So in fact, these criticisms are very constructive feedback. They're telling us what we should be doing instead. So here is what we are committed to do. And we are doing. We engage with genuine dialogue and we respect Indigenous culture. Our new program includes Indigenous culture-based learning for Keiki for children. And we started new workforce development for underserved students, and we commit to educational support. And of course, we are committed to environment protection and conservation. But for the last bullet point, I also emphasize that it's extremely important to build relationship because there's a lot of myth, a lot of some misinformation regarding our telescope. So once you build relationship, this misinformation goes away quickly. They tell us, oh, I didn't know that TMT doesn't use bomb to discriminate to flatten the land. No, we don't use bomb, and everything is environmentally considered. And so once we build relationship, a lot of myths, a lot of these misinformation go away. But previously, we didn't have such relationship with community members, in particular Indigenous communities. So that's what we are trying to do now. Before, TMT had legal license, legal permit. However, we didn't have social license. So now we're building relationship. And over the past 4 years, we have launched more than 20 education outreach programs together with our local communities. So every program is led by our community leader, executed together. And ultimately, all these programs are reviewed by our community members. And our advisors and reviewers include Kiai protectors of Maunakea. And we have 5 categories in our education outreach and broader impact programs. The first one is education and workforce development. This is a STEM learning and career pathways, creating career pathways for students, in particular underserved students in rural area. And the second one is indigenous cultural-based learning. So we work with, we partner with culture practitioners, and we co-create programs. And of course, we have been doing environment protection and conservation, forest resource restoration, as well as coral reef conservation. And we are doing a lot of community volunteering work. In particular, our staff in Hilo, Diana Basil, has been making blankets for underserved students and kids. And the last one is the new webinar training series that we launched last year for our staff. Our staff at TMT also need to learn about Hawaii and culture. So we invited our advisors, including Kiai leader, as a guest teacher. So they have been teaching us the Hawaiian philosophy and culture and history. Here is a list of our partners. Our partners are growing, and we have over 20 partner institutions, including Hawaii State Department of Education and University of Hawaii and community colleges and Hawaii County, the Maunakea Observatories, of course, Immunoastronomy Center, and indigenous organizations such as Native Hawaiian Chamber of Commerce, and of course, business Chamber of Commerce organizations. And we are very honored to work with our community partners. And as I said, our programs are community driven. And without these partners, we cannot do what we do now. Since our time is limited, so I will only talk about a few programs that we launched over the last 4 years. The first one is STEM curriculum and development and teacher workshops. This is led by a local science teacher. She is the Hawaii State Best Teacher of the Year, and she has been getting all sorts of awards recognized in the nation. And she told us that a lot of teachers, science teachers here in Hawaii, don't feel comfortable teaching science. And so if teachers don't know how to teach science, or if they don't feel comfortable teaching science, how students can learn, it will be very difficult for students to learn science. So we created this new program. It's a curriculum development aligned with NGSS, Next Generation Science Standard. And we have been conducting teacher workshops. So a lot of teachers who take these workshops are from underserved communities. And we also provide lesson kits to their students. And we have been able to reach out to over 2,000 students through teachers. And after pandemic in 2021, I quickly learned the significant damage to education loss due to pandemic. And here on the Hawaii Island, more than 1,000 students couldn't move to the next grade level after pandemic. So in Hawaii, a lot of schools were closed for over a year and a half. And at the time, students were taking online lessons. However, some students didn't have Wi-Fi. So without internet, how you can learn? In fact, you cannot. And as a result, a lot of students were failing classes. So we asked local school teachers and principals how we can assist these students. And the answer was tutoring. So 4 years ago, we started weekly tutoring together with local school. And this program has been extremely rewarding for us and also for students. 75% of these students are now moving up to the next grade level, and some students are just thriving. And it's also wonderful experience for us because it teaches us the real situation of the school and students and the needs. And also it gives us opportunity to brush up our communication skills and feel we're also the part of the community in this community. And the third one is on the right-hand side. It's a mirror assembly lab. So we have a plan to convert one of the existing buildings in Hilo to mirror assembly lab to create more high-tech local jobs. And we can hire interns for STEM education and workforce development. So they're having a lot of interest in this project. And in fact, the community college chancellor is asking us the job description so that she can train her students now so that by the time these students graduate, they're ready to apply for this position. We continue to work with existing Maunakea observatories and NORLAB and University of Hawaii and Imiloa. We have a variety of astronomy events almost every month here in Hawaii Island, and we join and we work together, Maunakea observatories and NORLAB for these outreach programs. And we also started collaborating with Ohana Kilo Hoku, Native Hawaiian nonprofit organization, to do stargazing, Ohana stargazing on Hawaiian homesteads. And we integrate indigenous knowledge with modern astronomy. And the last one on the right is the Alalauloa Global Youth Ambassador Program, which we launched 2 years ago. This is an indigenous and traditional culture exchange between Hawaii and our partner countries. So as you know, TMT has international partners in Japan, Canada, and India, and also the mainland US, Caltech, and UC. And each partner country has their own traditional and indigenous people and culture. So instead of hiding who we are, we decided to embrace our culture, our partners' indigenous culture. So 2 years ago, together with Hawaii County, we took students to Okinawa, Japan, where I'm originally from. And last year, we took students to British Columbia, First Nations in Canada. So I will show you a video that we created. So for this program, we partner with Hokulea, Polynesian Voyaging Society navigators, as well as Hawaiian Kumuhula, cultural practitioners. So before the students go to other countries, they take cultural lessons, workshops from Kumuhula, and they learn about navigation. And this is, they're in Okinawa, Japan, and engaging with Okinawan students, and they teach Hawaiian language and hula to local students. Excuse me. So this one is in British Columbia last year, Penticton, British Columbia. We were graded by their indigenous people, First Nations, Simpington. This is at the final ceremony, and students danced the hula. And they also engaged with First Nation students. And in fact, these First Nation students came to Hawaii afterwards. So we hosted them in Hawaii. We also visited radio telescope in British Columbia. And every time we visit new place in Canada or in Okinawa, students did Hawaiian protocol. So they chanted in Hawaiian language, asking permission to enter. And this was led by Kumuhula Kealachin. So all these activities we reported to NSF, and last year we had the external evaluation review, and our outreach Hawaii community engagement were recognized by the panel. So this is what the report says. It is noteworthy that some of those who formally protested the sighting of a telescope on Maunakea and wanted TIO to leave Hawaii are now asking them to stay, owing to the impact of education and outreach activities on their children and community. This is quite extraordinary and the sort of progress that needs to be made for science and indigenous communities to work in harmony. I would also like to play this video from Hawaii County Mayor. And in fact, he was Kiai protectors of Maunakea in 2019. He and all his families went up to Mauna protesting against the 30-meter telescope, TMT. And he became mayor the end of last year. And this is one of the videos he posted on his social media.
Hey, hello, Hawaii Island. I want to use my update this week to add some substance to a draft video that was circulated about my support for the new version of TMT. That's right, the new version is a label that I used throughout my campaign. When asked, do I support TMT, I've always said, which version? Because I don't support the 2019 version, and we cannot have a repeat of the 2019 situation, okay? But after 2 years of talking stories with Native Hawaiians whose views vary from the left to the middle to the right, I've learned that many Hawaiians and people from Hawaii would be okay in considering a new version, one that TMT leaders and the Maunakea Authority could agree as a starting point for discussion. You see, TMT gives us leverage to make the mountain better, so the new version should commit to the decommissioning of at least 5, maybe 6 telescopes. Okay, it should make all the observatories pay rent at $1 a year, that no can. Okay, it should protect the aquifer by not digging down more than 2 stories or 25 feet. It should identify all the cultural sites and the endangered species and make sure that it's protected. Okay, TMT should have a decommission plan before it even starts. And when decommissioning begins, those jobs gotta go to the local contractors. And plus, revenues from TMT that should be diversified to include the whole island community. See, these are the possibilities for the decision makers to consider. It's not a perfect plan, but it starts the process for discussions that I support, because we gotta start someplace. Okay, so hey, stay tuned, you folks. Have an awesome, awesome weekend, and a hui ho.
Okay, from here, Fengchuan, would you like to talk a little bit about mayor or the authority? Next slide.
Yeah. Well, starting from the mayor, I was first introduced to him almost 2.5, almost 3 years ago. He was very hard on me. First conversation, he didn't even want to talk to me. It was it was quietness. It was awkward quietness. And then later on, we met again at a Hawaiian homestead, and he was pounding on me with all kinds of questions. What happened here? Why TMT did this? But the conversation went on for more and more, and he started to feel, you know what, this is different, and I can see a path forward that if it's done right, and it can benefit our people, our island. And what's being right is not defined by us on TMT, is defined by the Hawaiian people, and that's the key. And that's why I think you hear what the Native Hawaiian mayor is saying. Okay, next slide. And the state has done their part as well, and they formed 2 or 3 years ago this Maunakea Stewardship and Oversight Authority, MKSOA. It's by state legislature, the first state agency, state level agency in about 3 decades, I heard. And it's adopting a holistic stewardship approach. For the first time, Native Hawaiians have a seat at the decision-making table. In fact, among the 11 voting members on this authority, 6 or 7, I think it's 7 are Native Hawaiians. A couple of years ago at the WS in Seattle, many of you were probably there. 3 members from the authority, actually, the chair, the first vice chair, and second vice chair were in the audience, give a town hall meeting in front of over 1,000 astronomers, engineers, and Caillou was from Imiloa was moderator. And the next day, that session went really well, receiving standing ovations. The next day, Science Our Work reports that new state panel stirs hope for giant telescope. Next slide. Back to you, Yuko.
Oh, okay. So what can we learn from TMT? As I said earlier, TMT is not just Maunakea, not just Hawaii, it's beyond Hawaii. It's not a unique issue. In fact, a lot of science and technology projects sits on indigenous land, and this is a global challenge. Indigenous consultation and consent remain key concerns. So I put some pictures of Kip Peak National Observatory, which sits on indigenous people's land, as well as SKA in Australia. And we have been sharing our mistakes and lessons learned beyond astronomy. So last year, Fengchuan and I were invited to join a panel led by United Nations. It's a science summit, and the title of this session was Decolonize Science to Bridge Worlds. So we shared our learning with global audience. And we are also invited to social studies conferences. This is me, gave a talk at the lower left corner, 4S conference, Cultural Astronomy. And we were also invited to share our experience with SKA team, as well as earlier this year, we spoke with Cosmic Explorer team. And so our lessons are now shared with global, broader communities, and we continue to do so. So Fengchuan, perhaps you can do this summary?
Yeah, this will be very quick, and we fully, completely respect the Maunakea sacred space for many Native Hawaiians. Ultimately, people in Hawaii will decide the future of TMT on Maunakea, and that's what it ought to be. And we continue to listen and learn. This is an ongoing process from the community. We follow Astro 2020's call for community astronomy. We continually to improve our understanding of community astronomy and do better. Engage with local communities, especially with the indigenous community. And our focus is on the people in the community who otherwise don't have a voice, or the people we did not respect enough and work with enough. And we believe in community partnership. All of these things we do are based on community partnership. That's it. So thank you.
Great, thank you. There were a number of questions from Anna. I'm going to invite Anna to unmute, but Fengchuan, Yuko, perhaps you can look through her questions and address some of the key points there.
Yeah, so maybe I could just start on this list. And so what can we do to contribute to the effort as scientists who are currently using Maunakea observatories and dream of using TMT one day? This is a very good question, because a lot of times we're asked, you know, what if we like what you're doing? What if you leave? What about what happens after? How do we make sure this is long term? I think the best way to do that is we all do this together. Not just us, all the people in Hawaii, or people who come visit here, or even if you don't here in your own community, whether it's U.S. mainland, Canada, or where else, and find ways to do this. And there are plenty of opportunities. And I think that's the only way to make it lasting forever.
And is there, sorry, just to complete on that, is there any like guidelines or resources to help scientists to know where to direct our efforts? Because we're always happy to try to do outreach or I don't know, but maybe having some guidelines that help us figure out where our effort would be more beneficial or how we can contribute to these efforts, I think would be helpful for us as well.
Yeah. Right. I think in each case is different. And so instead of giving very specific guidelines to do what to do, I hope this webinar will shed some light on the kind of things that's important to the community, especially the ones we haven't done before, the people we haven't reached before, the people who otherwise don't have the opportunity or voice. And I think that's where we ought to focus on. Again, we participate in all activities as Yuko mentioned, all the Maunakea Observatory activities and UH-led activities, we participate as much as we can on this island in Oahu and other places. However, recognizing TMT's challenge is bigger. We got to do more. And that's why you see a combination of, we participate in everything we can, but also we try to do more.
Thank you.
Okay. Is there any? Okay, the next one. What is the impact of the current federal guidelines on DEI? This is also a good one. The latest interpretation from federal government is that indigenous community or issues related to indigenous community do not fall into DEI category. So in a sense, we have a exception perhaps, but I would broaden this up. My personal view is DEI or not, we don't have to use the DEI words. In fact, we don't. But this is the right thing to do. We just have to do the right thing. It's absolutely the right thing to do, particularly in indigenous space like in Hawaii. I don't think there's any controversy.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the question was more like related to what happens to the funding, like related to this kind of activity, I guess, is not considered DEI, so that's okay. But what about the NSF budget proposed reduce, and so on? How does that impact you guys, basically?
That's actually a good question. And so far, all of these activities that we described here that Yuko mentioned, all of these are funded on our partners' funding. It's not funded by NSF at all. Going forward, we're learning the NSF process. We're learning their guidelines that may be evolving or changing. But I think as of today, my understanding is working with the indigenous community is not precluded. It's not prevented by NSF guideline.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Fengchuan, there's a question from Stan. I'll unmute Stan if he wants to respond, but it's about, could you give more context on the requirement for decommissioning of existing telescopes and the outlook for the process?
Okay, decommissioning, I think going back a little bit, in 2015-ish, there was a Governor Ige had a 10-point plan for the future of Maunakea, and I think there was one point was regardless of TMT or not, there should be 9 telescopes, no more than that. And that was, so that basically implies you gotta, if TMT doesn't happen, you gotta decommission 4 telescopes, and if TMT does happen, 5 telescopes. So that was my understanding. So far, 2 telescopes have been successfully decommissioned, Hokukia and also Caltech's Native Hawaiian Observatory, as Yuko shown here. The sites are restored as much as possible to its original situation. And going forward, exactly which observatory decommission, that is the task in front of, will be in front of the Maunakea Stewardship Oversight Authority. And they're the ones who will decide on the future of everything on Maunakea. So I would just stop there.
Okay. If that was good enough for you, Stan?
Oh, thank you.
All right.
There's another question. How many students were helped through the tutoring program? I'll answer and Yuko can chime in. I think each year there were, well, each session on a weekly basis. At the beginning of each semester, there were maybe 10, 15 students, toward the end 50, 60 students. So we go there, help them. We're part of the team. We're not the only one. There are school teachers and other community members come here. We're part of the team, including some from NKOs, from Geminis and Supros and others. UH. And so I would say each semester, several dozen, perhaps, that been helped. But I think, in my view, it is not the absolute number that is the most important. It is the fact that we spend our time. We want to build a relationship with the community, not the current, but the future generations through these children program. If you think about how much academic things we help the students, they're actually very limited. But it's the connection, it's a relationship, it's the learning from the students, how they struggle at home in the community, the environment they have to deal with. That is opening our eyes. It is teaching to us as much, as Yuko mentioned, as much we learn from them, in some cases more than they learn from us. And some of these students really gain confidence, and they start to work in a way that is unbelievably positive. And one of the students, Yuko tutored, her name is Sophia, the same as Yuko's daughter. And it was very hard at the beginning. And I had similar experience with other students as well. But long story short, after 1 year, the second year, we don't see her. And the next day we were walking to the campus. She just dashed down from a distance, came to Yuko and gave her hugs like 5 times in a short period walking to the classroom. She said, you know, Auntie Yuko, look at my grades. I proved my mom wrong. She told me, don't get your hope high. I don't want to see F. D is okay. C is okay. Look at my grades. I have A and B's now. You gave me hope. You gave me confidence. I can make it. That is everything to me. That one example is worth every effort.
Okay. Are there any other questions?
There's another question from Anna.
Okay.
A timeline would happen. My sense is the longer it passes, the harder it gets to actually build TMT. You're absolutely right. Timeline. You know, the project, we do not control the timeline. I'll be very honest with you. The timeline is controlled by 2 entities. One is NSF, because we count on NSF's MREFC funding to complete this project. And before NSF can commit to that, if they commit to that, they have to complete a lot of things. One of them is cultural consultation, or so-called Section 106 process. I don't speak for NSF, but this is my understanding. If you go to their website, and they are projecting completing that process by end of 2026. The second one is MKSOA. We talked about the future of any decision on Maunakea goes through MKSOA. And they start to talk about TMT. I follow their meetings every month, and they start to talk about TMT and this issue. Hopefully, at some point, they will address this issue as well. So hopefully, it's on the same time scale towards the end of 2026. And that's the timeline I can give to you. In fact, if you look at what's happening in the federal government, to have the government come up with construction funding, probably it's not going to happen in 26. It's probably 27 anyway. FY 27 means end of 26. That is how I read about timeline.
Great. All right. Oh, Karun, let me see. Karun, I unmuted you. Okay.
Hi,
Did you have a question?
Fengchuan.
Yeah, hi. Yeah, we can hear you. Do you have a question?
My question is regarding one of the slides where you mentioned that far beyond observatories, so there has been so much of disrespect to the local Hawaiian communities. And, so how much of lobbying is TIO able to do?
Lobby, what do you mean by lobbying? Karun?
Oh, you.
Oh, okay. What I heard the question was talk about historical widespread disrespect to the Hawaiian people. In that context, how much has lobbying has TMT able to do? I don't fully understand the question, but let me try to answer what I think you are asking. Yeah, I mean, if the complaints I hear through our conversation is not just about Maunakea. It's not just about last few years. It's about over 100 years of history, how the Hawaiian people lost the land, lost their kingdom, and how they almost lost their language for 80 years or so, plus they were not allowed to speak their language even in Kamehameha school. And then only in the 70s, the cultural revival were able to, through that revival, they were able to preserve their culture, revive their culture and language and stuff. And there were complaints about, the decision made on Maunakea or elsewhere important to their land are made without their full participation, without their voice heard. Through the legal process, but without their voice heard, and that applies to the TMT case. We follow the legal path, and we had the legal permit, but we did not engage the broad Native Hawaiian community, if you will, and that's a mistake we made, and that's a thing we are correcting. And I take exception to the word lobbying. As I mentioned from the very beginning, this is not about lobbying. It's not about PR. This is not about public relation in the traditional sense. It's about digging into our souls and looking at, ask the question, who are we? We're scientists, but are we good neighbors? Do we respect people? Do we respect the land, the culture, the history, the people that we do science here at? Wherever we are, it could be in Australia, could be in mainland, could be in Canada. How do we build the relationships so that it's mutually beneficial, mutually respectful forever? And it is in that context we learn and we conduct our work.
So Karun had an issue with audio. Okay, go ahead. Try one more time with what your question is.
Yeah, I hope you're able to hear me. Sorry, I just lost my audio when I unmuted. So Fengchuan and Yuko, I really give you kudos for all that you've done in the last few years. It's been amazing how you managed to turn things around. So my question was regarding, having done so much, you are only one part of a much, much bigger issue, the kind of disrespect and dishonor that's been meted onto the Hawaiian people through many generations now. So in the broader context, how much have you been able to lobby on behalf of the Hawaiian community with powers that make bigger decisions, like at the state level and at the federal level, and even locally within the Maunakea observatories? Because in your slides, we can see a lot of work being done by your team, but it would be great to see a team composed of participants from other observatories as well. So that was my question is, can you take the work you've done now and go and educate other players in this bigger picture? That was my question.
Yes.
Sorry, it did not come across properly.
No, that I get it. Thank you. That's a very good question. As we mentioned, as Yuko mentioned, we actually, this is our step four of our process is communication. I can say this, I don't claim to use the word educate others, and we do so in the context, we share our experience, share the lessons learned, the mistake we made, how we're correcting from that. And it's in that context, we share with everybody. We go to international conference, we do webinars, we do presentation everywhere we were invited to. We share with the local community, with Rotary Club, with Chamber of Commerce of every single one on this island and in Honolulu. We talk to the county officials, the state officials, governor's office, representatives. We talk to federal elected officials, senators, House representatives. We do it every opportunity we can.
Great. Well, thank you so much for educating us about your work, Fengchuan, Yuko. We are going to be putting this presentation on our website, and you'll have a chance to ask other questions. People who couldn't attend today can ask questions. We'll have some mechanism for handling that. And then again, remember in 2 weeks' time, starting an hour past, wherever your time zone is, we'll have another webinar on the design development process of TMT and how we stack up competitively with other ELTs. So thank you so much. I'm going to stop recording and appreciate your time.
And we just want to, our whole team, the TI organization, we very, very much appreciate everybody's interest in this, and you continue to support and criticism. Believe or not, we learn the most from criticism. So thank you